show where I try to educate real stories.
Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Tonight, I want to talk about the candidates who are running for judge. And in particular, I want to speak to Sheila Acosta. She's been a lawyer for 18 years. She's in the studio. She's one of my very, very good friends. And we want to talk about the importance of voting. Sheila is the Democratic candidate for County Criminal Court number 7.
Correct.
And we want to talk about and educate you about the criminal justice system as it relates to voting. So many people do not care about the judicial races, do not care about or even know about how judges are elected. But we want to talk about that process, engage you in that process, invite your comments to call us and talk about that process, and just kind of get a feel for what happens in a county criminal court at law. Harris County has 37 criminal courts, 15 misdemeanor courts, and we're going to focus on the misdemeanor courts tonight. It's 15. Their numbers are 1 through 15, and as I said, Sheila Acosta is running for number 7. And each court has about 1,000 cases pending. So if it's 15 courts, it's about 15,000 cases pending total. And we need more representation of Democrats. Right now, all 15 courts are Republicans. It's been that way ever since I've been down at the courthouse, just about, since '94 anyway. This is the time that they run. The county courts run during the governor's race. From my education and my telling you each week, our system was created or is organized such that it's a straight ticket run. I mean, it's not nonpartisan like some states. So if you've moved here from another state, it was different. Ours is partisan. So many times in the community, I hear people say, I don't vote straight ticket. Well, unfortunately, that's the type of system we have. It's a straight ticket because you would never know all of the judges who are running. You would never know all of the issues that are there, Democrat and Republican. So I would suggest whatever party you affiliate with, you vote straight ticket. And if you know someone in some particular races, then you can go to those and pick the person of the opposite race, be it a Democrat or Republican. But without any further ado, I want to introduce you to Miss Sheila Acosta. So Sheila, thank you for being my guest tonight and agreeing to talk about the misdemeanor courts in Harris County.
Well, Vivian, thank you very much for having me here. It's so important that we reach the voters of Harris County. We don't have a very good track record of voting, especially in the off years. That means in the non-presidential elections. And in these off years, the misdemeanor courts, which are probably a court that many citizens in Harris County at some time in their life, either they or someone in their family or a close friend or colleague might actually appear in a misdemeanor court. There's a good chance of that in your lifetime. As a matter of fact, several years ago, I almost got arrested for a criminal trespass at a cleaner's because I'm an educated woman, but this was back before my legal career. I went in and they wouldn't give me my clothes. They gave me the wrong clothes initially and I returned them, and then I had already written a check for that. And they wouldn't give me back my check or my clothes. So I refused to leave until they did one or the other, and they called the police on me. And the officer did give me an opportunity. He said, you can leave or I'm going to take you downtown and arrest you for criminal trespass. I think, and I did leave, by the way. But I will tell you this, there's so much that people don't understand about the law. And in misdemeanor courts, there are misdemeanors, that they're minor crimes. But if you for example, if you get caught shoplifting, a case what seems so minor as shoplifting can actually ruin your life forever.
Forever.
It can keep you from being licensed in any profession in the state of Texas. And there are certain ways you can kind of amend that and fix that. But basically most young people who are the major contributors to shoplifting don't understand the system. And right now we have a desperate need for change in our misdemeanor courts, all 15 of them.
I agree with you on that. I agree with it from such a radical standpoint, because I think that the system that we use in our criminal justice system is like a 50-year-old antiquated system. It's for problems that happened in the 40s and 50s. I don't think it's current. I don't think it's recent. I don't think it's relevant to what's going on in society now. For example, DWIs is big business, and it's bad. But I think texting while driving is more dangerous than DWIs now. So we have the big push and a lot of extra money with Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. The DWI laws have gotten so complicated and convoluted, like that's the biggest menace on the road. Well, it was at one point, but now driving downtown every day, the most dangerous people are in the daytime that are texting and driving. They'll go from a 4-lane, one-way street from the far right lane, looking at their GPS or playing on the phone, and just swap over to the left lane, and they cause accidents every day. I was on Holcomb this morning and scared to death because I saw a kid that kept, every time he stopped his car, or stop and go traffic, he would look down at his phone and start texting. So, I mean, to me, that's relevant, that's current. And really, we need to be lobbying the federal legislators to create kill switches in cars when people are texting. Because that's really what's going to kill most of us, rather than a DWI. And so many accidents are caused by people's use of their phones.
Well, you can be driving down on any given day at any given time, and you can look to your left or your right, and you're going to see someone on the phone. And they have a few commercials out where his last thing he texted was, "Hey, what's up?"
Right.
And there are people getting killed from this. It is a very serious problem. But our system right now is not, they're very hard to change, almost anything. We get 350 new prisoners a day, defendants in our jails a day, 350
In misdemeanor?
In misdemeanor a day. And when you look at the exorbitant costs that we are spending, the average stay for a misdemeanor is 28 days. And a lot of that is for possession of marijuana, even trace amounts of marijuana, trace amounts. And you think of what we're spending on that when we need to be reallocating our resources to something that really is going to matter.
Right.
I'm not saying that the law is the law. Marijuana is against the law. However, there should be some programs that could be implemented, especially for young offenders, and that's where our possession of marijuana cases are coming from, our young offenders. They need to be educated about the consequences of marijuana and have some open programs. I know one of the district attorney, Kim Ogg, who's running for district attorney, she has, I think, a really good plan, and I'm sure there are other plans that could be implemented if we can make some changes in the people who are sitting on the bench down there to get some help in that way. As a criminal attorney, I have, in any given week, 4 or 5 cases of possession of marijuana. If that person happens to be Hispanic, and the district attorney seems to think there has to be what's called a RIP call, as you know, they'll keep those people in there for sometimes 2 or 3 weeks just trying to find someone who can translate into Spanish. We have so many problems down there, and you're talking about $350 a day per person who's sitting there. Those resources need to be reallocated because we have some serious crime in Harris County. Example, 2.5 years ago, my house got burglarized, and it's now been almost 3 years, and I have yet to talk to a detective about my case. And their answer to that is, we have 250 new burglaries a day. That means no one's ever going to help me find my stuff.
Right.
because we're too busy spending money
On marijuana.
on marijuana.
On marijuana.
And trace amounts of
Trace
marijuana.
amounts of marijuana.
Or
because-
criminal trespass. Or
Right, evading arrest. One of the
Exactly.
things I said off camera was really, if we really thought about it, we really should only be putting people in prison who won't stop taking people's property, violating people's homes, stealing their property, and violent people. Really, because really, all of the drug-related crimes that people should go to prison for are the violent ones. When people are protecting their territory, drug wars when it comes to violence, because a lot of the marijuana users and sellers and the little amount of crack cases, they don't have weapons when they're found. I mean, they don't have weapons on them. They're just, because, I mean, $10 worth of crack, $10 worth of marijuana, they don't really need a gun to protect that. I mean, that's no different from having $10 in your pocket. So, I mean, people don't, I mean, so it's the violence that we need to spend the money for to take people out of society. And there was a time when we were young, I'm sure you in New Mexico and me in Texas and San Antonio, I've spoken about this many times. I mean, unless people were violent, they didn't send them to jail. I mean, cops would arrest us in high school or stop us for a ticket. If we had a beer, they'd pour it out. If there was marijuana in the car and it was a felony then, they'd throw it away. And this was Black and Hispanic kids. I mean, they didn't do any, and the police were white. I mean, in San Antonio, no one did anything unless you were violent. If you robbed somebody with a gun, if you sold heroin and had a gun, if you, protected territory with a gun, those were the people that the police used their resources to go out and arrest and send to jail. If there was a fight that ended up with someone being cut or stabbed or shot, that's the only ones that we use our judicial resources for. Even fights at school, the schools handle it. They suspended them, they call the parents, and they let kids learn how to resolve their issues and be friends a week later and look at each other. They didn't send them to prison. They didn't send them to jail. And that's just an overuse of a system that has been privatized, really. I mean, because really, a lot of these prisons are privatized. I mean, remember before Adrian Garcia, the Harris County jails, they were sending them to private jails just to hold them for their cases outside in Louisiana and other counties. At least Adrian Garcia, when he came in, a good Democrat, when he came in, he programs to get people out of the Harris County jail, 3-for-1 programs. People are in jail taking classes and getting certificates for things. I mean, he's implemented so many good programs because really, if we're going to use these resources with young offenders, we really need to start rehabilitation programs. I mean, our society suffers if we don't do that. I mean, if we just lock people up at 17 and 18 and 19 and don't try to teach them skills and use this money to teach them skills, we all suffer because people are only going to stay in jail a little while for these crimes, and then you've ruined their record because with the advent of computers, everybody has a record now, and no one's going to hire them. So we have people that are the most robust, the most energetic, their brains are working so well, so creative, and we have them sitting at home watching TV because they can't get a job.
Well, exactly. And you take any offense, let's just say assault at a school. When kids fought when I was young, granted, that was a long time ago, but there were other resources. You used your schools, you used your principals, you used your teachers effectively. I was a teacher for 23 years before I went to, as you know, before I went to law school. And having taught for 23 years, I'm telling you, there are ways to reach young people to prevent crimes before it ever happens. We're not doing that. You see a young person come in for possession of marijuana, they offer them 30 days or 15 days. And I will tell you, since this election has been, one of the topics downtown, they have changed that a little bit. But my opponent, for example, for 16 years, and almost every single judge who's sitting on the bench now has been there 16 or more years. There aren't any programs. Where have those programs been for 16, 17, 18, and in many cases 20 years? Why is it taking so long to implement a program that would save our young offenders from having a record for life? If you rehabilitate, you teach them, you educate them, it's good for the whole community. Yeah. It's not just for that one person, it's for the whole community. Right. And we're not doing that. We're punishing, punishing, punishing. Let's punish, punish, punish.
And the thing that's always so hypocritical to me about it is we're punishing kids for marijuana when we know that 90% of us smoked marijuana before in our lives. You know what I mean? I mean, even the police officers that are stopping people, they know they've tried marijuana. If not, a close friend or relative has. And we were talking about it off air also, that no one's ever died that we know of a marijuana overdose.
Exactly.
Like alcohol poisoning, but it's legal. And so I'm hopeful, like a lot of people say that they don't think that marijuana will ever be legalized in Texas in their lifetime. I actually disagree. I think that we're going to have some young legislators start taking over in the next 15 or 20 years, and I hope we're still here. And I think we're going to still be here. And I think that things are going to change rapidly.
Well, in this generation, when you look back, you know, back in the 1920s during Prohibition, when alcohol, you couldn't buy alcohol over the counter, they had to change that because the money that it was costing for Prohibition to keep alcohol out of the common man's hand was exorbitant. And that's what's happening now.
With marijuana.
With marijuana, it's costing so much to marginalize, try to
criminalize
marginalize
it.
And
because this is the deal. This is the deal. Let's remember this. The reason why marijuana is such a big deal is because 90% of everyone who is stopped with a traffic ticket, if it leads to an arrest, the police officer says the car smelled like marijuana. 90%. I mean, at least 90%. It smells like marijuana. I mean, people don't have their guns out. They don't have their drugs out. So to get to a lawful search, an officer has to say it smells like marijuana. So that means everybody that gets arrested in cars, which is half the prison population, gets arrested for drugs in cars, even crack or bigger amounts of drugs, the car smells like marijuana. And we know, as working in the system and talking to these young people every day, that 9 times out of 10, the officer took you out of the car because you look suspicious and then said it smelled like marijuana after they found what they were looking for, if they found what they were looking for, and you never see any marijuana. I mean, these cases, half of them, you never see any marijuana. I mean, it might be crack, it might be a brick, it might be some fake probable cause, but there's never burning marijuana or marijuana in the car.
Well, and this actually did happen. I had this case, which I just was...
Let's take a quick call.
Okay, sure.
I see that we have a caller. Caller, please turn the volume down on your TV and talk directly into your phone. Thank you for calling.
Hello.
Hello.
I noticed that whenever you have a judicial candidate on any local show, they never mention their opponent. And a couple other things I'd like to talk about is that Devin Anderson, I know maybe y'all didn't see this on the evening news, she announced that there would be no, for a first offense, no arrest, no bail required on marijuana. Now, this is great, but she's outdoing what Kim Ogg was attempting to do. I notice young Democrats and young Republicans are picking up this subject, and they're moving quickly on this, and this is great. Besides, marijuana seems to be a miracle drug for all sorts of reasons. But we have things in place that, like, if you read the Houston Press 2 weeks ago about this young woman that she was presented in the emergency room with symptoms of a major stroke. She was denied clot-busting therapy because it was mentioned that she was at a party and smoked a little dope, drank a little booze. So they were going to let this young woman die just on that point. It's madness.
It's madness. It is madness. But it's our fault, caller, because we don't vote enough en masse, and we let one party, the Republicans, dictate our future. And where has it led us over the last 20 years? It hadn't led us to good results. I mean, laws have become more nonsensical. People have become less compassionate, just like you're saying. I mean, that's crazy. That's not the democratic society that we were raised in as children. It was to care and be concerned, not to say, oh, well, you're this, so we're not going to treat you. At a hospital, you treat everybody. So I agree with you. It's awful. And by the way, I mean, I was a prosecutor with Devin, and I have emailed and invited her to the show. because Kim Hawk has been on. I haven't gotten a response. But I believe that what you said is true. That I didn't watch the debate because I have had Kim Hawk on. I know her. I was a prosecutor with both of them, actually. And I know that the law has been, at least for 8 years, that you can give a ticket for marijuana. So that's been the law. I mean, the legislators passed that law in Austin at least 8 years ago, maybe 10. I can't remember exactly. And Harris County chose not to do it. Dallas County was doing it. They've been doing it for years. So if Devin said it, she's just saying that she's going to follow the law that's been there, which is what her job is to do anyway.
Well, I'd like to address your comment on the article in the press. I actually did read that article. It was heartbreaking. This young woman, because she had been out earlier drinking and had smoked some marijuana, went in with what any doctor would recognize as stroke symptoms, but was not treated for that, except for her fiance, her boyfriend at the time. He's now her husband, but he took her to another hospital because they were not going to treat her as a stroke victim. They said because she's been drinking, she probably has some sort of, because she has alcohol and marijuana in her system, that's why she's acting this way. She was unable to verbalize a sentence or tell them what was wrong. And yes, Devin Anderson has come out now with a program to...
But when? She's been in office for how long? A year and a half?
Mm-hmm.
And so
She
she's
only
going to do
came
that
out with
only
this-
because of
Kim Ogg. Kim Ogg came out with her programs to give them a couple of days of community service at the bayou, cleaning up the bayou, and helping to clean, and then dismissing the case and letting them clean their record. And now suddenly Devin is coming up that we need to quit giving such strong, recommendations for incarceration on possession of marijuana. But this has been an ongoing thing. You talk about the millions of dollars.
Our jails are full behind marijuana. It's crazy. And we're spending $350 a day for the smell of marijuana, for a roach, for a doobie, for something that's not even lit, for states that have it legal, and we don't have a documented case of anybody dying from just pure marijuana when we die from alcohol. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, 400,000 people a year die as a result of alcohol. Okay, we don't have anything like that for marijuana. And I think it's time that not just possession of marijuana, but other misdemeanors are looked at more closely and given options to people that will help them rehabilitate, so to speak.
And also help the system not have 350 new misdemeanors a day, not have a system that has 1,000 cases pending with three prosecutors and one judge and a court staff. Let's have meaningful, don't let just the officer just arrest everybody they see to keep this pipeline going. Let's have some meaningful, don't get mad at someone on a stop and just arrest them. Don't just arrest people that don't look like you because it's easier to arrest and keep your statistics up. That's just not fair, and it's not right, and it's a drain on an entire system because we have to use our tax dollars to pay for it. Let's have meaningful arrests where someone is a menace to society and we really want to lock them up.
It's unbelievable, and you probably won't believe it, but it did happen. I had a young man who was arrested for possession of marijuana, a car stop, okay? The officer said he had the young man put his hands up, and he smelled his hands.
It smelled like marijuana.
And they smelled like marijuana, and he arrested him for possession of marijuana because his hands smelled like marijuana. I did eventually get that case dismissed. There was a prosecutor who, common sense will tell you, what was his probable cause to stop him? He couldn't smell his hands from his car. So yes, it's ridiculous and almost egregious the way we're treating minor cases.
And an officer is arresting someone, humiliating them, taking them off the streets, and not dealing with other property crimes like breaking in people's houses and cars and other things that are a nuisance. I see we have another call. Caller, please turn your volume down on the TV and state your comment. Thank you for calling.
Yes, good evening, ladies. My comment is it a reason why they have it voting straight ticket here in Texas? Is it because Texas is really a Republican state It might not be the case here in Harris County where it's straight up and down voting. You know, where you can't select in each individual that you would like to select.
Let me tell you this. Texas is organized that way, and we don't know why, because it was before we started voting. So, and I've never looked into the legislative history of that. You're welcome to do that just like us, because you'd have to read the legislative minutes on it. But I can tell you this. You can select whoever you want. The problem is you won't know who they are. And it's designed, because we have about 300 judges in Harris County. I only know the criminal judges, which there are 37. I don't know the family court judges, and I've been a lawyer for 22 years. I don't know the probate judges. I don't know who the judges are. But the way our legislators, because Texas is so big and we have so many judicial officers, it could be straight. It could be nonpartisan. It could be where my name is against Sheila's, and then you have to just decide which name you like the best or which person you can research. It can be that way. That would be the fairest way, and that's the way many states are. But Texas didn't do it that way. Texas has decided that it has to be partisan. Because a judge shouldn't really be a party. The judge should be following the law based on the Constitution and the statutes that are created by our legislators. But that's not the way it is. So it can be changed. You can run for the legislature and vote for it to change. It doesn't have to be this way. That's just the way it is.
Well, okay. So that was the question is. So it is set up that you have to vote one ticket. You can't go and do one or the other. Say I wanted a Republican here.
Yeah, you can. There. Yes, you can.
You can?
You can. You can pick whoever you want to pick, but do you know who they are? That's the problem. So you have to, it's designed to be a total ticket, and everybody is straight ticket. But yes, you can just pick me if you want to. If when I was running, you could have just picked me. You could have been a Republican and gone down the list and said, okay, you cannot pick anybody. You can just go and pick whoever you want on everything. Okay. But how do you know who they are? So I'm just saying it's designed that way, but you can definitely pick who you want to pick.
The only reason why I ask is because if they take the notion of just voting party lines, okay, if you're a Democrat, 9 out of 10 in a Texas, in a Republican state, if they're going to outnumber you. So if the Republicans are going to vote all Republicans, they're going to outnumber the Democrats. So I think the strategy should be, if I was running for office, to pick me personally. I'll be running for me personally. If the other Democrats make it, that's fine. Because if you do it just off of Democrat and Republican, since the majority are Republican, you don't have no chance of winning.
But let me tell you what's interesting about that. That was what we thought when we ran the first time. I've run twice, and I spent $60,000 of my own money, which was very hard to raise, and I'm the brokest I've ever been at 55, because it's 4 million people in Harris County. You could never get to those people. You need $1 million. I had fundraisers. I would spend my money on food, because when people come to fundraisers, especially if they're poor and minorities, which is all you can attract, or Democrats, they give you $1. Okay, you spend $1,200 on food, they give you $1. Raising money is the issue. You can't raise money. You end up spending it yourself. You can't put enough signs in 4 million households. You can't do that in Harris County. I tried. You do run for you. People, we have to try to do it as a team. We tried to do it individually and do a team effort. It didn't make a difference in how many. I might have gotten 1,200 votes more than the other Democrat, but we all lost by 100,000 votes because the Republicans vote straight ticket. So unless the system is either changed or more Democrats come out, we have just as many Democrats registered as Republicans. It's just the Democrats don't come out except for presidential elections like Obama, because Obama won in Harris County both times, but nobody else did, because Republicans were voting straight Republican ticket, and some of them would click off and vote for Obama.
And also, our municipal elections, like our mayor,
they're nonpartisan.
They're nonpartisan.
So you have to vote for the person.
So you take the time to say, well, this person has the issues that I like, and this is where I'm going to vote. In our elections, there are so many people it's so convoluted, our ballots are so convoluted, that it does make more sense to vote a straight ticket, because there's no way like Vivian said, 300 positions that you're voting on. There's no way you could know all those people. So we tend to vote Democrat or Republican.
Or we don't vote at all.
And that's the problem.
And see, that's the problem. So the Republicans are smart. They vote straight ticket, but Democrats will say, "Oh, I'm only going to vote for who I know." And then you go in there and vote for 5 people, and you don't vote for me because I don't have enough money to get to your household. And every fundraiser I get to, I'd go to Party on the Plaza, places where I know a lot of Democrats would be, and I wouldn't get to talk to 5 people because as I try to talk to people, they'll start telling me, "Well, why should I vote?" I mean, you start getting all this negativity. And you're trying to do this for the community. I'm not trying to do this for me. At the time, I made more money than judges did. Don't now, but I did then. And so I was doing it being altruistic, thinking that I could help and make a difference. And all I got was people beat me up in the community, and I couldn't raise any money. So it sounds good, but you got to have $500,000 to get signs out on all these. Those signs cost a fortune. And people, they cost a fortune.
But that's why the people at the top of the ticket, those running for governor and lieutenant governor and DA and some of the major races, they get money from all over the state. We're limited right here in Harris County pretty much, and there's no way we can reach that on our salaries because it comes out of our own pockets.
And the thing is this, see, you have to understand with politics, a person like, say, Sheila Jackson Lee, a legislator in Congress in D.C., they control the disbursement of money for contracts, like for the war, for big companies, Halliburton. So Halliburton's going to give them $1 million. What do judges control? Criminal judges, particularly. We're controlling the fates of a lot of minorities. So do you think that even a rich Democrat's going to give you money? No, I mean, so it has to be the everyday person that's contributing to it, and the everyday person doesn't care. Because we go out there. The reason why I started this show, caller, is because I lost twice, and I said, well, I'll never win in this lifetime at 55, so at least I can do something for the community. I can try to educate, if I can just educate 3,000 people, that's better than I'm doing as an individual, because making people aware and hopefully putting it on YouTube for the next generation to care about who their judges are. And Houston is rare, is a different bird. I'm from San Antonio, same system, but people actually research and find out who their judges are. Dallas is different. Dallas, the people are more conscientious. The politicians at the top actually help educate people about who the judges are at the bottom. But our politicians in Houston are selfish. They worry about themselves, but they don't help the down ballot people who can't raise money. In Austin, they're controlling the government contracts, okay? So the big contractors are giving them money because they're not just making laws that affect crime, they're making laws that affect everybody who has to have insurance and who the insurance providers are, who can Allstate work in the state of Texas. They're voting on those type of things, so Allstate's going to give them some money. Do you understand what I'm saying? But a business is not going to give me any money because I'm running for judge, and that doesn't affect them.
Right. Well, I think the strategies in this day you're absolutely right. You got to use social media.
We did it. We did all of that. But the Republicans were so cold. My niece went to U of H at the time, the last time I ran, and she said that they got an email and Twitter thing, don't vote straight ticket, and it came from the Republicans. And because if you vote straight ticket, then Obama won't win. Social media can go both ways because you don't know who you're getting it from. And so it can educate and it can miseducate and it can misinform. Right. And my niece knew her aunt was running, so she voted straight. She voted for me and Obama. But she didn't vote for the rest of the Democratic ticket because she had gotten misinformation. That if you voted for the Democratic Party and you didn't do something, that it would negate the vote. Or so it was a lie. But that's what all of the U of H students got. All
right, real quick, I was going to say on your heading it had September 1st.
Yeah, I didn't do that, but Mark probably knows it. Mark.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right. But anyway, so anyways, 15 courts, so I think you've kind of said it in a backdoor way, but Sheila, why are you running?
In the 18 years that I've been down there in the criminal courts, I have seen the way the courts are run. I see that you can go to one court, say you go into court 3, and you can get an offer from a prosecutor we've been talking about possession of marijuana, so let's just stay on that for a second. You can get an offer from a prosecutor for possession of marijuana for 20 days, first time offender, okay? Then you can go to court 2, right next door and get time served.
Right.
There's no consistency.
Right.
The same crime, basically the same background, you're not getting a fair shake.
Right.
I want the citizens of Harris County to be able to go into any one of the 15 courts and find that they're there, they have a right to be there, they needed to be treated fairly and equally as if they went into 15 or if they went into court 2 or 1 or 7 or 8, 9, whichever court. There has to be some consistency here. I also believe that when you've been on the bench for 16 years and the only time you've come up with some new ideas is in an election year, this is another reason, to your caller, when you vote bipartisan, when you have bipartisan elections, it hobbles you. It hobbles the whole program because you spend so much time trying to get reelected, okay, that you really have lost focus on what you're there for. You're there to help the citizens of that county. And that's not what's happening. You go around town, you see all these signs for different judges, people running. This whole year, okay, is about the election.
Right.
From the beginning of this year until November 4th, that's really where their concentration is. And I believe a lot of these judges, including my opponent in Court 7, believe that that's her bench. And she has actually asked many of my colleagues and some of my family why I'm running against her. I'm not running against her. I'm running for the citizens of Harris County. I want to see some changes, some new programs, some transitional courts for our young offenders to keep them from getting a record and keeping that and just building on that for the rest of their lives.
And Sheila is a good candidate for that. Sheila was a teacher, like she said, for 23 years, so she dealt with the youth. She speaks 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. In fact, she taught French and Spanish, and I was lucky enough to go to Paris with her for my 50th birthday, where she knew how to speak the language in Paris. So she's very smart. Her husband's a lawyer. He's been a lawyer for how long?
Almost 30 years.
30 years as a criminal defense lawyer, and she cares. She's down there every day fighting the good fight for the citizens, realizing that the system needs to be fair. We're not saying that if she was a judge, she wouldn't follow the law. Of course she would. But you can also you can spend some time. What frustrates me about the judges, and I remember when I ran, is I get tired of people getting full-time pay and working part-time. I get very frustrated. You get to the courts, by 2 o'clock, 1 to 2 o'clock, those courts are empty. You're paying full-time salaries for part-time judges. And that's not fair to the citizens of Harris County when we have 60% of the jails filled with people who are waiting for a trial date. I mean, really, there should almost be a class action lawsuit at that jail against the judges who are gone at 2 or 3. If you are so tired after 16 years that you have to leave at 2 o'clock and you know people are sitting there in jail waiting for a trial, then shame on you. I mean, shame on you. I understand it's a tough job. I probably work 10 hours, 12 hours a day in my job. Certainly you can work 8 hours.
Well, I do a lot of court appointments, and I would say the majority of my casework is court appointed. And I will tell you, court appointed lawyers work hard, and harder maybe than most.
Right.
Because you get several cases a day, and you have to reset a lot of these cases. It's all about the docket. It's the docket. We have too many on our docket. Well, you wouldn't have as many on your docket if you, instead of just having court from basically a few courts from
9 to 12.
From 9 to 12, and at that time it becomes a graveyard. There's nobody down there. You can't get an answer. You can't get anything filed or done downtown in the courthouse itself, in the courtrooms, because there's nobody there. My opponent says she has had over 600 trials in the last 16 years. But when you look at a misdemeanor trial that generally lasts a day, and when I say a day, they pick the jury at 10, they start the actual trial at 1. It may go that afternoon and part of the next day, but most of them are 1 day. So you're talking about 35 to 40 days a year where there's a trial, and there's still hundreds of people on the trial docket.
That plead guilty because they could get out faster than getting a trial. That's no justice. And half the people who plead guilty are not.
And that's what young offenders are doing.
Right.
They don't have the money, they don't have the resources, they don't have family support in many cases who can say, we're taking this to trial.
Right.
And older offenders who are going to lose their jobs because they have to sit in jail, they can't afford the bond.
Right.
That's another thing that needs to be addressed is
Right, the bond.
these bonds that are so outrageous that
For misdemeanors.
For misdemeanors. I have seen in the last couple of years, because of immigration, someone who has a Hispanic name has been given a bond of $35,000. Now, that's not just one time I've seen that. I see that daily. Why? Because they want to first check and see if that person's illegal. That person, in the meantime, is sitting there who is an American citizen, has a Hispanic name, has a job, but can't afford that kind of bond, sits there until they make their decision. And then some of the judges will reduce it. And yes, I think it is up to the attorney to try to get those bonds reduced. But when you look at the dockets, our dockets are just outrageous in every court. There's thousands of cases open that people want a trial, but they end up taking a plea because it's easier for them.
Let's take another call. Caller, please turn your volume down and state your question. Thank you for calling.
Yes, my calling is for the candidate. Sheila, I'm a teacher, and I see regularly that our kids don't know much about how the judicial system affects them, and they often come away from their experiences in the courtroom quite negatively with a negative view of our judicial system, because I feel and they feel that it works against them. Now, I heard you say earlier that possibly you had some ideas about programs and ways that we can educate our youth, and I was just wondering what you had in mind there.
This is very dear to my heart because the first 23 years of my career, like I said, I was a teacher. And now in this last 18 years, I see so many students coming in who they offer them a probation. There's such a thing as called a deferred probation where, at the end, if they do everything right, they can eventually get their case closed. The problem is that if we could reach these students by forming groups that actually went to the schools, maybe even offered a course at several of the high schools, I think eventually, it's going to take time, it can't be done overnight, but if you could educate these kids, because they don't realize that stealing a Tommy Hilfiger shirt or some Nike shoes is going to ruin their life.
For the rest of their lives.
For the rest of their lives. Till the day they die, that's going to be there, that they have a crime of moral turpitude on their record. If we could develop some groups to go out on a regular basis, and I don't just mean the private schools like Duchesne and St. Pius. A lot of the schools bring their classes in and the judge empties the courtroom and they talk to them for a few minutes.
But they're all rich kids.
Yeah, that's not teaching. We're not getting to the people who need it. We need to go out there and tell these kids, if you have a problem, you want to talk to somebody, here's a number you can call. I personally, if I become judge, would love, and I will do it, I will go to as many high schools personally and speak to them about specific cases, possession of marijuana, theft cases. And if I could get in there, I can't do it all by myself.
I'd help you.
But there are many, like Vivian,
I volunteer for everything,
who work in the community. I know there are so many attorneys who will form groups and go to schools and educate. If you educate, you're not going to have to worry about them being in your jails because they don't have any idea what's down the road for them when they pick up that pair of Nike shoes and run out that store.
And I agree with you, teacher, also that we don't explain how judges or elected. We don't do enough in Houston and Harris County. I'm very disappointed about it. Like I said, I was raised and graduated from high school in San Antonio, Bexar County, which is a very much poorer school district. But we understood our system. We understood who our judges were, who our mayors were, our politicians were. I mean, growing up, we talked about that in the news every morning. All our news is about is who got killed. We don't talk about things on city council agenda or about meaningful things about children or about the system at all. I mean, and it should be on the news, really.
Well, in a particular scenario that I've come face to face with, I've seen that, especially during the times we had the hurricanes hit New Orleans and Louisiana, when we had a lot of minority children coming towards the Houston area to move here, I've noticed amongst my children that the spike in arrests for marijuana use, because it's charged differently in Louisiana than it is charged here. And I was wondering how you might treat a first-time offender that is unfamiliar with our laws because they change from state to state.
Well, someone who would come here as a first-time offender, or even a second or third-time offender, we have to, as a judge, we're sitting for all the public. So we have to let them know that there are consequences if you break the law. I'm not here to say, oh, I'm going to change the law. I can't do that.
Right.
I can't do that.
She can change the programs.
But I could see that working with probation, working with the defense bar. Here is the problem we have. The prosecution will offer something up to the judges. Is that something they want to see done? And I'm going to give you an example in just 1 minute. And they put this into the court system, but they never ask for anything or any ideas from the defense bar. We're the ones who are representing the defendants.
Right.
And yet we have no say-so in some of the programs and some of the things that they want to do. And here's my example. We have some apartments, I guess I can say it.
Yeah.
Called Haverstock, where there's a lot of crime, a lot of drug deals going on.
Because it's 100% Section 8. Haverstock is 100%
Right.
Section 8 housing.
And the problem is that the district attorney's office and the judges got together and agreed on this, that if someone was arrested at Haverstock for a criminal trespass case, that they had to get at least 3 figures. That means 100 days or more.
Wow.
When the maximum on a criminal trespass is 180, and they had to get at least a minimum of 100 days. The prosecution could not offer you less than 100 if it was a criminal trespass at Haverstock. I've had many clients who are taking diapers to their children at Haverstock, whose mothers or aunts or someone lives there, and not one of my clients has ever been caught with drugs. But they had to do 100 days.
Because they're visiting the premises. Just think of how unfair and almost racist this is. I
completely agree.
If I go to an apartment complex to take somebody something, then I'm going to get arrested for criminal trespass. Now remember, it has to say no trespassing. And if a police officer that's perusing the area and policing it decides that maybe my pants are sagging or my hair is all over my head, that I'm trespassing because I can't say, because a lot of times when people go to apartments, now you know how kids are, I'm like this too, you don't even know where you are. You're trying to find the place, you're walking around, you're roaming around, but you're trespassing because you're going to visit somebody, and that's the problem. They decide who's trespassing. And how do you know if somebody has been invited to visit somebody?
Right.
I mean, you don't know that, and that's one of the craziest things that happens down there. People in jail for trespassing, for visiting. Almost everybody charged with trespassing is visiting somebody that they know at that apartment complex. They might be standing outside smoking a cigarette, but they know somebody that lives there.
And they might say, well, you're not on the lease, are you? Well, no, I'm just here visiting. And someone who has family there, say a man and a woman, they're separated or divorced and they have children.
Or they just had children together.
Yeah, and the wife lives there. And he's responsible. He needs to bring stuff to and help.
Children, and visit his children. But the cop is going to decide that you're trespassing and you have to stay in jail 50 days. Just think of how defeating that is to a person who has barely been employed, might have just had their first job after doing wrong, and now you're going to lose your job because you've been gone for 50 days. Can you imagine any Anybody not being at work, a teacher can't be losing that many days. But see, they're going to only do that to people who they decide that they can do that too. Poor people. And that's what's not fair. And judges are the referees, so they don't make the decisions. The prosecutors and the defense lawyers come with the agreements, but the judges can make sure that the punishment is ferreted out fairly. By saying, by asking questions like, I wonder why this person got 50 days, but you only gave this person 5 days, to kind of raise the consciousness of the prosecutor who
Exactly.
who might be unfair, who might be giving certain lawyers certain privileges, or might be giving certain defendants who look a certain way certain privileges. A judge can question those things and kind of raise the consciousness of the prosecutor, because a lot of these prosecutors come from wealthy backgrounds, who are in their 20s, and so they really don't have compassion for people who have a different experience than them.
And losing a job to them, they might be able to go to their parents or friends or family to help them. A lot of these people lose their jobs because they have to stay in jail for a certain amount of time. And they will take that before they'll go to trial, because going to trial is even a longer.
It'll be 6 months to a year.
6 months, a year in misdemeanor court.
That's crazy.
That is unbelievable that people have to do that. I don't know if I answered your question, but I hope I did.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I do appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So those are some good changes that we talked about. So we talked about it talks about assaults, thefts, possession of marijuana, criminal trespass, which is a big one. And we also talked about theft cases, and prostitution is another crime of moral turpitude, which is a big misdemeanor case. So these are the common ones: DWI, assault on a family member, where there's pain but no broken bones or no weapons, where there's a theft under $1,500, where there's possession of marijuana, evading arrest on foot, and criminal trespass are the main ones. I mean, it's 100 misdemeanor crimes, but those are the main ones. Or maybe possession of a little pill.
And there's also evading, resisting arrest.
Oh, resisting arrest, yeah, that's a
unlawfully carrying a weapon. These are crimes, and they have to be addressed. I'm not here tonight to say, oh, let's just forget about all those.
Of course not.
Of course not. We have some really serious crimes. There's burglary of a motor vehicle. Nobody wants their car broken into. And yes, you want to see that there's punishment done. But it can't just be arbitrary. It can't just be, in this court, I'm going to give them 300 days because I hate burglaries of a motor vehicle. My car was just broken into 3 weeks ago, and this kid is going to pay for it with days in jail. Then you go into another court. Okay, well, I think 150. It's his first offense. Let's give him 150. There's just no consistency in what you get. And that's what I'm saying. We have to develop a program where you go into any court. It's blind justice. You shouldn't go into one court and get a completely different offer than you would in another court. And that's what I'm hoping. But because we have all Republicans sitting on the bench right now, and we have for the last 20-something years, they all pretty much have the same attitude and forethought. Many of them think marijuana is just a terrible crime.
Although, like I said, I would put money on many of them tried marijuana when they were in college.
Right.
Because they're our age group, and most of us did. But yet, to create other ways to help these kids to make it a better society you'd have to work full time. You'd have to work maybe extra, do some community service, get out there and do some things. And remember, most people are, raising their kids. They're, getting paid full time with full-time benefits for part-time work.
These programs, though, that could be started in the afternoon, judges could go out in groups of 2 or 3, or even individually to a high school, make the rounds. We have a huge district. I mean,
right. But it can be divided up.
It doesn't have to all happen in one day.
Right.
So yes, we need to use our afternoons, use every day, and it takes cooperation from the whole group.
Right.
And
the problem is things have been done the same way for so long with the same group of people, the same mindset of people. All people that came from the district attorney's office, all people who are from the same communities, live in the same communities, married to each other, all one party, that there's no innovation, there's no imagination, there's no compassion, and there's no conversation. I mean, a person like me who's willing to help both sides, Republicans or Democrats, you know, I'm hated. No one wants to talk to me because I'm a troublemaker for wanting people to do things to help people in the community. And that's just unfortunate that that's where we are. You know, keep the status quo. Of course, unless it's for my kid or someone, you know, that's, you know, rich, then, you know, there'll be exceptions made. But it's unfortunate that if you bring up race or anything different, that you're shut out and you can't have a conversation. It's just, it's sad.
It is sad, and this all comes back down to this voting on
And we have
November
3 minutes,
4th.
so let's talk about it.
We have enough Democrats in Harris County that we can win an election. We have to motivate people to get out and vote. And how do you motivate them? Well, most people are not motivated if it doesn't concern them. But the misdemeanor courts and the family courts and the probate courts, these all have to do with the people and the citizens of Harris County. At some time in your life, you or someone will have to go in front of one of these judges. Try to put someone on the judge that's going to bring integrity into the courtroom, equality and justice and fairness for everyone.
Right.
Think about that. It may not be you right now, but you need to think about changing what we have had for so long. It's not working. If it was working, our dockets would be way low. We wouldn't have thousands of people set for trial.
And you'd know who your judges are, because if the judges were getting out into the community, you'd know their names.
Exactly.
You'd know who they are. You don't know who the judges are because they don't have to get out into the community.
You know who Sheila Jackson Lee is.
She's in the community.
She's in the community. You
Right.
see her all the time.
Right. But
Okay?
you don't see your judges doing that because they don't have to.
And
And if
basically,
you get to the court after 2 o'clock, you might not see them in the courthouse.
there is time to go out and register to vote. If you have not registered to vote, you need to get out and get registered to vote. Early voting starts October 20th, and the election, of course, is on November 4th. There are a lot of people who are not going to vote, and you know what? We live in America. Let's use our privilege to vote. This is something that will affect you. And voting in this election is so much more important than voting, not more important, but as important as voting for the president. You'll never probably meet the president. You'll probably never meet the governor, but you will at some point maybe divorce or probate someone who's died in your family, their will, or someone runs into you while they're texting and you go to civil court.
Or your kid gets arrested for possession of marijuana
Exactly.
or shoplifting. You'll go before a judge. And you need to Google our names. You need to vote Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has a good slate. And so you need to check that out. But don't just go for the status quo. Don't do it. So stay involved. We're going to talk politics from now, most of the month until the election. So please come ready with your comments. Sheila, I'm being told to wrap it up. So thank you so much for spending this hour with us, educating voters in Harris County. Spread the word, please, viewers, on your Facebook pages, on your Twitter, to get out the vote. Vote for Sheila Acosta. Vote for Democrats. Learn who your judges are. Learn who the people who want to be your judges, and hold everybody accountable. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Good night.
Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to